Thank you.
Mr. Branson, Miss Jane Marple is here for her appointment.
Jane.
Christian.
How good of you to come.
Oh, no trouble at all. I'm in London once a month anyway to do a little shopping.
Well, come in, please. That report?
It hasn't arrived yet, Mr. Branson.
All right. Thanks, that's all, Miss Valentine. Well, please, sit down. You look marvelous, Jane. Not a day older.
Oh, it's only 4 or 5 years since you saw me last at Stonygate.
I'm afraid it's been more like 13.
It's been 13 years? That's terrible. How is my dear Carrie Louise?
You know my stepmother. Still living in her own little world.
Ah, there is Carrie Louise.
Yes, that was taken last year.
And that's her new husband with her?
Oh, not really new. They've been married for over 10 years now. Yes, but that's him, Louis Sericold.
I've heard very nice things about him.
Yes, well, I must say, he simply worships Carrie Louise.
Well, he'd be a fool not to.
Jane. Well, that's my half-sister Mildred, but of course you know that.
Yes, of course I know Mildred.
Yes.
Christian, what is it? You've been wanting to say something to me, but for some reason or other, you're not saying it.
Do you have time for a stroll?
The point is, I thought I'd have certain information by now, and I'm afraid I don't.
Is it concerned with Carrie Louise? She's all right, isn't she?
Well, that's it, you see. I'm not sure she is.
Jane, is there any way you could spare a few days to pay her a little visit? I really think that just now she could use an old friend about.
And you can't tell me any more than that?
Not until I'm absolutely sure. I'm sorry, but if you could take a morning train, I'll be down myself tomorrow evening, and I'll be able to explain it all to you then.
You're getting me very worried.
Oh, I suppose I must be. And I'm worried, too, more than you can imagine. My stepmother's very dear to me.
I'll take the next train home and call her from there. I can be at Stonygate by early afternoon tomorrow.
Oh, that's marvelous. And if you would, could you just say you had this sudden whim to see her? I don't want to alarm her in any way.
It's something very serious, isn't it?
Yes. I'm afraid it is.
Miss Marple. Miss Jane Marple.
That's right.
I'm Edgar Lawson. I'm Mr. Sericold's assistant. I'll come to fetch you.
I'm very pleased to meet you, Mr. Lawson.
Yeah, if you just follow me, I've got a van round the back.
Thank goodness! I was so afraid I was going to be late. How was your train trip? Absolutely wretched, it had to be. Did you have something to eat? You must be starved.
Well, actually, I had some fruit and cheese with me. And thank you for asking, but I don't think I know you, do I?
Well, I know you, and you're just as adorable as I remember. Well, I'm Gina.
Gina. Gina! Pippa's daughter! Of course. Oh, I didn't recognize you. But actually, you were 9 years old when I saw you last.
Yes, I remember at my parents' funeral.
From the moment I heard of that terrible crash, I've refused to ride in an airplane.
Don't worry. I'm driving you to Stonygate.
Oh,
Hold on, Gina. I'm supposed to be driving Miss Marple. It's all been arranged.
Well, consider it rearranged, Edgar. You just take Miss Marple's luggage. Oh, go on.
I don't think Mr. Lawson is too pleased.
Well, perhaps I was a little hard on him, but Edgar's such a pompous little twit.
Pippa's daughter. Oh, I should have known you straight away. You're just exactly like your mother at your age. She was so beautiful, even as a child.
You knew her way back then?
I'm from way back then. And I knew Pippa practically from the day that Carrie Louise and Eric picked her up at the orphanage.
It's funny the way things turn out, isn't it? They adopted my mother because they thought they couldn't have children of their own, and the very next year they had Aunt Mildred.
Oh, Mildred married a vicar or somebody, didn't she?
Yes, but he died of cancer last year, so she's moved back to Stonygate. Mostly hangs about looking like a rain cloud, I'm afraid. Well, here we go.
We're going rather fast, aren't we?
Yes. Don't you love it?
You remind me of a little girl back home. Always rode her bicycle as fast as ever she could.
Oh, I did too.
And after the accident, she even joined the county wheelchair race. Bless her, she came in fourth.
You know, it's been so long since you visited Stonygate, you'll hardly recognize the place. Lewis has turned Stonygate into a prison. Oh, well, not really a prison, sort of a rehabilitation center for juvenile delinquents.
Like that boy at the station. He said he was Mr. Serical's assistant.
Oh, Edgar! Oh, he hasn't the brains for that. Do you know why they put him away in the first place? He used to go around claiming his father was Sir Laurence Olivier or Paul McCartney or just anyone. Anyway, Lewis likes to make them feel like they're all part of a family, so they're given these little jobs to do and that sort of thing. Do you think that's sensible?
I suppose.
I think we'll probably all be murdered in our beds one night.
Gina!
You idiot!
But what was I saying before those silly sheep got in the way?
You were telling me about life at Stonygate.
Oh, well, yes, it's frightfully boring, of course, except the theatre part. Stephen's got me helping out, as a matter of fact.
Stephen?
Oh, Stephen Restrick, a young repertory director Lewis hired about 7 or 8 years ago to do the theatre business. Grandmother sort of adopted him.
How is your grandmother?
Well, I'm afraid you'll be shocked when you see her. I'm really concerned there may be something wrong with her. But she's such a dear. Even sent me to school in America. Growing a lot older, I'm afraid, but she still gets herself made up like the belle of the ball. Oh, but lately she's had a touch of flu or something.
Oh, dear. Did you enjoy America?
Oh, well, I'm not sure, really. See, that's where I met Wally.
Wally?
My husband.
Oh.
Yes, who is it?
It's me, obviously.
Come ahead, Mrs. Markham.
They have a gate guard?
Oh, yes, until midnight. Oh, that's Jerome Davis. Caught exposing himself in St. Paul's.
I suppose we all worship in our own way.
Oh, Aunt Jane, I'm so glad you're here. Oh, I think I saw Grandmother just now down by the lake with Mildred. Why don't you go and say hello while I pull the car around?
Oh, yes.
I'll see you later at tea.
Yes, of course, of course. And thank you for the ride. It was, unique.
I'll take you out tomorrow and we'll really open her up.
Mother, don't you think you've had enough exercise for this afternoon?
This is the same walk we take every day.
Still, Mildred, dear. Miss Bellava knows my limitations better than you do. Young man, you don't want to lose an eye, do you? There are so many wonderful things to see in this world.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Oh, Jane. You look wonderful. Come, come, Jane. I'm an old lady.
You are not, and I'm not either. We're still the same silly young ladies we were 45 years ago.
Oh, you remember my daughter Mildred, of course.
Mildred.
Glad you could come.
And this is our housekeeper, Miss Bellava, who insists upon treating me like a delicate piece of glass. She doesn't know I'm just a silly young lady. How was your trip?
Well, the train trip was quiet enough, but the drive with Gina from the station.
I know.
But they make a beautiful couple, don't they? Wally, that's her husband's name, isn't it?
Yes, Wally Markham. But that is not he. That is Stephen Restorick.
There's Wally.
Hey, that's my wife. What do you think you're doing? And leave her alone. Hold it!
Wally, stop it.
Mr. Markham's an American.
Stephen,
Jane,
you're all right.
I want you to meet my husband. He's quite a marvelous man. Come, dear.
Teddy Joseph, a very conscientious worker, and I'm sure you'll find his business skills first rate. Come in. Oh, hello, darling. I'm sending his academic transcripts under separate cover. Yours sincerely, Louis Sirico. Well, you have to be Jane Marple, huh? I can't tell you how delighted I am to finally meet you.
And I might say the same.
Just trying to place another of our little family. Max here feels the more we treat the boys as family, the more likely they are to start assuming responsibility.
I want you to meet Dr. Hargrove, Jane. Max, may I introduce Miss Jane Marple.
How do you do?
A brilliant psychologist and the resident genius of our little program here.
Oh, you're being far too modest, Mr. Sericol. Without you, there wouldn't even be a Stenagates Institute.
Nonsense. It's all your show. I just try to refine the boys' talents a bit.
I suppose you don't mean like safe cracking.
Nothing so exciting, no. We try to teach them the basics, typing, accounting, computer language, that sort of thing. We've hundreds of our boys in firms all over England.
That sounds very admirable.
A pebble in the quarry so far, I'm afraid, but it's a start.
If you'll excuse me, I have a staff meeting. Pleasure to meet you, Miss Marple. See you later at tea, I hope.
Oh, Max, don't be too hard on young Timmy Wellcrop for stealing those biscuits. Boys at that age just get hungry.
I'll tell him you've advised Mercy.
Well, you like your room?
I'm afraid she's not seen it as yet.
Oh, I'll take you upstairs then. Darling, no sense in your overdoing it.
I suppose not. Thank you, darling.
Come along, baby.
Oh, this is lovely. Quite.
Miss Marple, may I have a word with you?
Is anything wrong?
Yes. Yes, I'm afraid there is.
I wonder if this is what Christian meant.
You, talk to Christian?
Actually, that's why I'm here.
He told me that Carrie Louise needs a friend right now.
Did he say why?
He told me he'd explain it to me when he arrives tonight.
You know Carrie Louise well, don't you? She's found some secret, enchanted place in this world where nothing ugly ever seems to reach her. She may be out of touch with the reality that you and I know, but I happen to love her very much, and I wouldn't change her for anything. If she knew what I'm about to tell you, she'd be completely shattered. But Christian was right. She does need a friend, someone who can help her and who can help me look after her. As you saw, she isn't terribly well.
I'll do everything I can. Carrie Louise is a very special person.
She is. And I have reason to believe that someone is trying to poison her to death.
So, Mr. Serigold convinced Christian Galbraithson that an experiment like ours could serve as a pilot program for a whole new theory of juvenile reform. This is just the beginning.
Then the original concept was yours, Dr. Hargrove.
Essentially, yes. The basic theory is to let the boys develop their self-respect and confidence by treating them as members of a community rather than outcasts from one.
Except all they are is a bunch of teenage hoods.
I'm afraid Mr. Markham represents the prejudices of most of the outsiders.
Outsider, Dr. Hargrove? I've been here over a year. Yes, and you don't seem to have learned a thing. I suggest you back off, okay?
Mildred, is your mother going to join us?
I thought it best she lie down for a bit before supper.
Well, then I'd better bring up her medicine.
I already did. I prefer she receive it at the proper intervals.
Well, aren't we the jolliest group?
A most peculiar young man. He reminds me of somebody at home, but I can't think who it is.
Just another nutcase.
Most of us are a little mad, Mr. Markham. But actually, Edgar Lawson is quite bright. He was very good in that production of yours of The Mousetrap last year.
Oh, yes, I was sorry to lose him. But he thought there was some kind of dastardly plot against him when he couldn't get to play Richard III.
Like I said, another nutcase.
If you'll excuse me, I'm going to take a little walk.
Going snooping, Aunt Jane?
Oh, these? No. I'm afraid I'm just an old-fashioned bird watcher. I've heard there are some bearded reedlings in this part of the country.
Oh, Aunt Jane! Aunt Jane, that boy out there clipping the hedge, he spent 6 months in Bolstow for coshing old ladies and stealing their purses.
Quite a start.
You've been watching me.
What?
Don't lie. You've been watching me since you got off the train.
Have I?
You're planning something against me, aren't you?
Of course not.
You think I don't know what's going on? They want me out of the way.
Who? Who wants you out of the way?
How do I know I can trust you?
Don't I look like someone you can trust?
What are they for?
Bearded reedlings.
I've been betrayed.
Betrayed by whom?
By the one person in the world I trusted. The one who wants to get rid of me. Well, he won't get away with it.
Who's he?
My father. The orphanage falsified the records, so I wouldn't guess the truth, but I know now. I'll throw his lies in his face.
Who is your father, Mr. Lawson?
You'd like to know, wouldn't you? So you could warn him.
Of course not.
Well, you won't get away with it. None of you.
I think it best to get some outside advice.
Yes, I suppose so.
I only wish I hadn't been able to confirm all this.
It's Carrie Louise we have to consider now.
Yes. Well, we'd better get in. I'll go up and change. We'll talk more after dinner. Jay, I'm so glad you're here. You've seen my stepmother.
Of course.
How does she seem? Her health, I mean.
Oh, she's had a bout with the flu, but except for that...
But what about her heart?
Oh, I don't know. It's all right, I suppose. Christian, Louis told me.
Darling. You look wonderful.
Well, I'm delighted you think so.
Well, it's true.
If you have a moment, Max, I'd like you to look at those staff recommendations.
Be happy to.
They're very encouraging, I think.
Christian, you simply must tell me what's going on.
Oh, Miss Belliver, I want to get a letter off tonight. May I send one of the boys into town with it?
Certainly.
I'll be half an hour at the most. There's nothing to worry about.
What's the old boy doing here anyway? I mean, doesn't show up for 6 months at a time, and here he is twice in a fortnight.
Foundation business with Louis, I suppose.
Branson's a real marvel, isn't he? Always looks just like a millionaire should.
And how is that?
Perfectly immaculate and just a touch smug. I'm working on the look.
You've got the smug part down, Gold.
You being surly again, old man? Well, I suppose it's what you colonials do best.
Aren't you supposed to be at the theater watching your little gangsters play dress-up?
A bit later, yes. A lot more fun than just sitting around watching my wife support me.
You know damn well I'm going back to get my degree.
Oh, when? When Gina's money runs out.
I don't have to take this garbage. Get your hand out of my way.
Oh, if you two want to dance, don't let me stop you.
The boys are just being boys. Someday they might even grow into men.
Excuse me, Mrs. Terricoat.
Must I? I suppose I must.
Darling! Darling, I don't think you should take this tonight.
Why ever not?
Well, I'm not sure it really agrees with you.
Really, Mr. Terricoat, the prescription says 4 times a day.
Yes, well, she won't miss it for one evening.
That stupid circuit, it must have overloaded somewhere. I'll put another fuse in it.
Wally's very clever with electrical things.
That's about all he does do.
There you are.
Oh, of course I'm here. What's the matter with you?
You betrayed me. You've been spying on me.
Yeah? Now, please calm down, eh? You're upset. You don't know what you're talking about.
I know I'm saying right enough. You've been plotting to get rid of me.
Come on, come along. Now we'll just talk this thing out, hmm? Just you and me.
I'll take him back to the dormitory. Give him a sedative.
No, it's all right, Max. Just needs some talk, hmm? Do it through here.
He had something in his pocket. Edgar, I mean.
In a film, it would be a gun.
I think, you know, it was a gun.
That's a lie. They're all lies. You are my father.
That's simply not true.
You've taken away my name, my birthright, everything.
Put that gun away.
You're frightened now, aren't you?
You'll kill him. He's crazy.
Edgar loves Louis. He won't hurt him.
It's locked. I'll get my keys.
We can't talk while you're pointing that gun at me.
And if I put it away, you'd come after me, wouldn't you?
It was outside. A car backfiring or something.
Edgar, this is Dr. Hargrove. Now open the door.
It's all right, Max. I can handle it.
You sure?
Of course I'm sure. Edgar's not stupid. He'll listen to reason. You're not stupid, are you?
No, but you must think I am if you imagine I'm going to put this gun away.
What good would shooting me do?
This much good.
Oh, my God. Edgar, please. Let us in.
Let me in. Edgar. Louis, darling.
It's all right, my dear.
What the hell's going on?
That maniac tried to kill Louis.
I'll telephone the police.
There's no need for that, Miss Belliver. It's all right, darling. Max, come in, will you?
Didn't mean to shoot. Something just came over me.
That's my gun. You stole this out of my room.
I don't remember.
Better lock it up for safekeeping.
Come on, Anne. Let's get back to your room. I'll give you a little something to help you sleep.
I telephoned the police. They'll be here in a few minutes.
I told you not to do that. This young man's not a criminal.
Believe what you want, but someone around here is.
What are you saying?
I'm sorry, ma'am, but Mr. Gulbranson's been killed. Somebody shot him in the head.
Christa.
I'm sorry, my darling. I know how much you cared for him. I wish to God you could have been spared this.
Nobody can spare anybody anything. Things just have to be faced.
According to what we know so far, Mr. Gulbranson was killed at short range, probably by a shot from a .38 caliber pistol. What you thought might have been a car backfiring at the time was almost certainly the fatal shot. At that moment, Mr. Sericle was in that room there, being threatened by a young man named Edgar Lawson. And with the exceptions of Mr. Markham and Miss Belliver, you were all in this room here until the body was discovered. Somebody care to add anything to all that?
Just that we appreciate your allowing Mrs. Sericold these few moments to herself.
I'll take that as a no, Miss Marple. Miss Belliver, what made you call in on Mr. Gulbranson?
Well, after Mr. Sericold was almost murdered, I thought I ought to explain all the noise to Mr. Gulbranson.
I told you, Edgar didn't try to murder anyone. The gun going off was an accident.
Oh, begging your pardon, sir. He did put two rather nasty holes in your book collection.
But not in me.
That could have been the accident. And by the way, Mr. Resterick, you were playing the piano. How long did you continue?
You mean, did I accompany that little scene in the den with a gentle obligato to the inevitability of death? No. I stopped when the shouting started. Too much competition. And now I'm late for rehearsal. If you need me, I'll be down at the theater.
What the hell are you asking us all these questions for anyway? I mean, what, we have over 200 delinquent punks? They live right next door, and they're all crazy as bedbugs.
He's right, you know. We have an outside door that leads to the hallway. It's never locked, except when we retire. Anyone could sneak in.
We will check everything, rest assured. Meanwhile, I would like to question you all individually. Oh, by the way, is there a room I could use?
You can use my study.
Most obliging of you, sir. I think we'll begin with Miss Marple.
Inspector, I think it's important that you should talk to me first.
In good time, Mr. Sericold. Please.
So hard to imagine, isn't it? The idea of murder, I mean. A person taking the life of another person. But I suppose it happens all the time. Though not as often as the films or television would have us believe. Although, on the other hand, the newspapers are full of such stories, and they don't lie about things like that. Although one wonders sometimes if they don't make up some of it, just in case their readers are tired of reading about Princess Diana or Belfast or even soccer matches. I rather like Liverpool's chances this year. Do you?
I think you can drop the act, Miss Marple.
Act? What act?
Pretending to be this dithering little old lady from St. Mary Mead, isn't it?
But I do dither. That's my nature. And I am small, I suppose. And old, too, I'm afraid. But I've known people smaller and older, and I don't see what that has to do. How do you know I come from St. Mary Mead?
Sit down, Miss Marple, please. I believe you know an old friend of mine that lives there. Inspector Blacker. He speaks about you a great deal.
Oh?
Yes, he uses words like meddlesome, obstinate, infuriating.
I assure you, Inspector.
On the other hand, he also says that you're intuitive, instinctive, and bloody useful, if you'll forgive the expression. But what I'm getting at is that this is an official investigation, and I will not tolerate any meddling.
I will be on my best behavior, I promise.
Blacker also employed the phrase deceptively cooperative. Now then, what can you tell me about this unpleasant business?
Well, for one thing, I noticed there wasn't any paper in the typewriter. You see, he was sitting at the table as though he had been typing, and there wasn't any paper in the machine. I thought that a bit odd, especially since Miss Belliver told me there was a paper when she found the body. But I do think Mr. Sericold was right.
What about?
That you should speak to him immediately. He might be able to tell you about the paper.
Mr. Sericold, would you step in here for a moment, please? What is this thing, by the way?
A dream, I'm afraid. Or a rather utopian news center. Completely self-contained community. Well, perhaps one day.
Miss Marple thinks that you might have some information for me. Thank you, Miss Marple.
Oh, please, no, don't go on my account. You already know most of what I'm going to say.
Oh, very well. But what are you going to say, sir?
Christian Galbranson was murdered because he must have known who has been trying, slowly and cold-bloodedly, to poison my wife.
Poison your wife?
Yes. He was here 2 weeks ago, and he noticed that my wife's physical condition had been deteriorating. Now, what we'd all assumed to be some form of influenza, the muscle cramps, the occasional abdominal pain, he suspected might be symptoms of arsenic poisoning.
Arsenic? Did he tell you this at the time?
No. He called me a few days ago. I think he must have taken away some evidence to check in London. A glass, some food, I'm not sure. Anyway, when he arrived this evening, he told me that his suspicions had been definitely confirmed.
That's true. I happened to overhear part of the discussion between Mr. Gulbranson and Mr. Sericold. Well, you were talking right under my window.
Now, excuse me. Did Mr. Gulbranson say who he suspected?
No, and I'm not sure he knew. But the murderer must have thought that he knew.
And you have no idea what evidence he had?
No, but, the only thing my wife ingests that the rest of us don't is her medicine. I managed to stop her taking some of this earlier this evening.
I'll have Sergeant Lake take this into town to be analyzed.
You'd better have this, too. It's the letter that Christian was typing when he was killed. I took it out of the typewriter.
Well, unless Miss Belliver was lying, he was the only one who had the opportunity.
Who is Dr. Galbraith?
The Bishop of Cromer. He's an old friend of Christian's under my wife's, also one of the foundation trustees.
Dear Dr. Galbraith, if at all possible, I beg you to come to Stonygate as soon as you receive this. A serious crisis has arisen. I am at a loss how to deal with it, and I don't know how much our dear Carrie Louise must be told. Not to beat about the bush, I have reason to believe that that sweet and innocent lady is being slowly poisoned. I first suspected this when it stops there.
When he was shot, I imagine.
But why would the murderer leave this in the typewriter?
No idea. Perhaps he didn't realize what Christian was writing. Or perhaps he didn't have time to check. Heard someone coming and just had time to make his escape. But I beg of you, Inspector, not to let my wife know anything about this.
But surely for her own sake she should be warned.
That may well be. But as Miss Marple will confirm, she would be devastated to learn that someone near and dear to her was trying to kill her.
Near and dear. You've got 200 juvenile delinquents within spitting distance.
Inspector, I'm obviously not an expert on these matters, but wouldn't a slow poisoner have to be someone living within the family?
There are outsiders.
Yes, Stephen Restorick, Dr. Hargrove, and some servants, but what motive would they have?
Who are the beneficiaries of Carrie Louise's will?
Miss Marple, please.
Oh, sorry.
Yes. Who are the beneficiaries of Mrs. Sericold's will?
Well, just about everybody, I'm afraid. Even Miss Belliver and young Restorick are given sizable bequests. Stonegates, of course, would revert to the foundation.
But you, as her husband, would benefit the most.
No. You see, 4 years ago, Carrie Louise signed over a third of her personal estate to me, therefore I'm no longer one of her heirs.
I see. So, with the exception of yourself and Miss Marple here, everyone in the house has a motive for killing your wife.
Nay, let them go. A couple of quiet ones.
Went they not quickly? I should die with laughing. Of all mad matches, never was the like.
Mistress, what is your opinion of your sister?
That being mad herself, she's madly mated.
Ronnie, you're playing a young woman, not a whistle only spaniels can hear.
That being mad herself, she's madly mated.
I warrant him. The tutor is cated.
Neighbours and friends, our bride and bridegroom wants, for to supply the places at the table. You know there wants no junkets at the feast. Lucintio, you shall supply the bridegroom's place, and let Bianca take her sister's room.
Shall sweet Bianca practice how to bride it?
She shall, Lucintio. Come, gentlemen, let's go.
All right, boys, that's good enough for now. I'll see you tomorrow night, 7 sharp.
Oh, come on.
Oh, come on. Yeah, let's call him in again.
Talking of madly mated, look who's here.
Ronnie told me he doesn't want to wear his dress anymore. Bianca has to wear a dress.
Last Ronnie and Bianca.
One of the boys may come back.
Well, they should learn how grown-ups kiss.
I'm sure they already know. But you could certainly teach them some of the finer points.
Oh, thanks for the recommendation. Oh, but please, don't tell your Neanderthal husband.
Oh, afraid I'll knock you down again.
More than that. Somebody around here kills people.
Oh, come on, Wally has a bit of a temper, but he could never kill anybody.
No, but you can't really be sure, can you? Anyway, it won't last, you know.
What do you mean?
Well, you and Wally. I mean, you certainly can't pretend you're suited to each other. The man's a walking sulk.
I know. And he used to be so much fun. Really a dreadful change.
I haven't changed, have I?
Fortunately, you are just the same. Remember how I used to tag after you every holiday?
I used to think you were just another bratty little teenager.
I was.
Well, the tables are turned now, aren't they? You've got me just where you want me.
I know. And I love it. See you later at the house.
Mr. Esterick, I came to tell you that Inspector Curry wants to talk to you. To everybody, really. Oh, it's just like a real theater.
Lewis had this built about 8 years ago.
Well, very good acoustics.
I've always felt that a great deal of juvenile crime is due to exhibitionism. Well, you know, the boys needing to feel like heroes and all that. Well, acting in plays can channel those needs in a constructive direction. And what I'd really like to do is start up my own facility in London. But I'm afraid that's a rather costly ambition.
I used to do some work with the St. Mary Mead Garden and Theatre Club. I was amazed at the way it brought some people out of their shells. Our only problem was when Mrs. Forbes Moncrief ran off with one of the volunteer ushers.
Who's there? I'll be right back, Miss Marple. Could be one of the lads with vandalism on his mind.
Out, damn spot. Out, I say. 1, 2, why then 'tis time to do it. Hell is murky. Fie, my lord, fie, a soldier and afeard? What need we fear that knows it, when none can call our power to account? Yet who would have thought the old man to have so much blood in him? The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven. Upon the place beneath.
At the time of this attempt on Miss Marple's life, Mr. Sericold was with me and Mrs. Sericold had already retired, so I will need to know where everyone else was at roughly 10:30 p.m.
Well, I was in the library, reading.
Alone?
One usually reads alone, Inspector.
Yes, I'm sorry if all this offends you, but there is obviously a killer running around.
But this business could have been an accident, you know. The equipment here isn't exactly West End.
Even in the West End theatre, a cut rope is a cut rope, and this rope was definitely cut.
I was afraid it might have been. It must have been one of those young thugs. I mean, which one of us would want to kill Aunt Jane?
But why would any of us want to kill your brother?
Mr. Esterick, you were on the premises, I believe.
Not really. I thought I heard somebody backstage, but I didn't see anyone, so I went on out. You know, maybe somebody lurking about. I dashed back in when I heard the crash.
You didn't see anyone going in or out?
No, but there are 2 other doors backstage.
And nobody saw you dashing in or out?
No. No one.
Inspector, I was in my office in the school. I'm afraid no one saw me either.
Do you know where Edgar Lawson was?
Asleep in his room, I think. I gave him rather heavy sedation after that gun nonsense earlier tonight.
Mr. Markham, where were you?
Walking. Down by the lake.
Alone, I'm sure.
Yes.
And I was in our room, alone.
It's not very helpful, all this, is it?
I don't believe any of us actually thought we'd be needing an alibi.
Oh, one of you might have.
You haven't asked, but I was with Mrs. Sericold in her room.
Was she awake?
Not all of the time.
Yes, well, that'll be all for the moment. I'll be back tomorrow morning. I suggest you all get a good night's sleep. Oh, there's one more thing. I don't wish to sound melodramatic about this, but I would strongly recommend that you all lock your doors.
You amazed me, Jane. Almost killed last night, and bright as a button this morning.
I think not being killed raises one's spirits.
Well, I think that inspector should get Wally into a room and force the truth out of him.
Mildred!
That's quite an accusation, my dear.
I'm sorry, but that's how I feel.
Why?
Well, firstly, he's the only real stranger amongst us. I mean, Gina only brought him over last summer. And secondly, he's American. So many of them have that streak of violence. I suppose it's watching all those dreadful television films. And then, look at the way he behaves. I mean, he can't stand the sight of any of us. And anyway, he's got all those guns.
Just a couple of target weapons.
What reason could he possibly have to kill your brother?
Well, perhaps Christian found out something murky about his past. He came from Chicago, didn't he? Well, that's where all the gangsters are.
Well, I must say, it hasn't exactly fitted in here at all. Seems to have no sympathy or interest in anything we're trying to do.
Excuse me, Mrs. Sericold. This was just delivered for you.
Oh, thank you. A box of chocolates. Oh, I just love presents. Oh, from Stephen. How sweet. Jane?
Oh. Good morning.
Stephen, Callie Louise would like to thank you for the chocolates.
Chocolates? What chocolates?
These. They came with your card.
Well, looks a little like my handwriting. But I'm afraid I wasn't that thoughtful.
Has anyone seen Inspector Curry this morning?
I think he's with Dr. Hargrove in the library.
I think I'll take these with me.
You'd think there was a bomb in that box of chocolates.
Well, I suppose with all that's been happening, Louis wants to be extra careful.
Fancy playing a game at this time. It's disgusting. And not even a black armband between you.
Well, I shouldn't think anyone brought anything like that with them. After all, they couldn't possibly have known.
Christian is my brother. At least my half-brother. You'd think some respect would be paid.
No offense, Aunt Mildred. I cared a great deal for Uncle Christian, but I hate wearing black. I mean, it may be all right for housekeepers and receptionists, but...
Yes, well, I'd expect that attitude from you, but...
No. It's not that important, is it?
Yes, it is. My brother's dead, and nobody seems to care. And you always take their side. I'm always in the wrong, and I'm sick of it.
So almost anyone had the opportunity to poison the medicine and put a bullet in Tibble Branson.
We might do better to concentrate on motive. Who really needs money from Carrie Louise's estate?
They all do.
I know that Stephen would like to start up in London.
Juliet Belliver would have enough for a retirement cottage. And she has been looking after the medicine, hasn't she? As for the Markhams, they don't have any money to speak of. And she has expensive tastes, that one.
And he might be happy to have enough money to get his wife away from here before she forms another attachment.
And the delightful Mildred, of course, would get the lion's share of her mother's inheritance. And then she wouldn't have to play assistant nursemaid anymore, would she?
Do you know what puzzles me?
I know what puzzles me. Who sent those poisoned chocolates? Oh, they were poisoned, by the way.
I assumed so. What puzzles me is how lucky our murderer was. If Edgar Lawson hadn't lost his wits like that, we wouldn't have been focusing our attention on the scene in there and might have noticed someone slipping off.
Yes, I think our young Mr. Lawson knows a great deal more, perhaps, than he's letting on. One of our suspects could have paid him to create that little diversion. What do you think?
I think I'm going to do a little bird watching.
I beg your pardon?
Just now, flying by the window, I think I saw a silver-throated dasher.
Did you?
I'll see you later.
Silver-throated dasher.
It's all right. I rather fancy this spot.
I had a damn of a time getting away. I had to get all those lights put back out at the theatre.
Why all this cloak and dagger, middle of the maze business?
Well, you know why. There's no sense getting the wind up till we go public.
Oh, do you really think we've got reputations left to protect?
Look, what I want to know is when you're going to tell Wally you're divorcing him and marrying me.
Do you think you can afford me?
Oh, I'll find ways.
Then what if Wally doesn't want a divorce?
Well, that's his problem. But every woman should make one mistake matrimonially. It's a stage, like puberty. Your husband may be very intense, which I know women adore. But intensity is terribly tedious in the home, isn't it?
Believe me, Gina, darling, with me, you will find life. A constant surprise.
Well, I shall have to think about it a little.
Of course. But just a little. I really adore you.
And you won't find a better offer.
You could come out now, Aunt Jane. Oh, I know you're there. Oh, so, were you entertained?
I couldn't help overhearing.
Oh, couldn't help. You were eavesdropping, just like at the theater last night. Oh, well, Stephen told me you probably overheard every word we said.
Well, I just happened to be watching a rehearsal.
Just like you happened to be in the maze.
I'm sorry, Gina.
So, what's the verdict? Jezebel? Strumpet? Trollop? What?
I'm not going to judge you. I only know that you have a husband who obviously worships you.
Oh, it puts me on some stupid pedestal. Do you think that's what I want?
I don't know what you want, do you?
Maybe I want it all, just like everybody else. Maybe I want every man I meet to fall in love with me. Maybe I want my freedom and enough money to enjoy it.
And how do you propose to get all that?
Oh, I don't know. Perhaps I'll poison Grandmother for her inheritance.
Gina.
I'm not a child anymore, Aunt Jane. Oh, that business with Louis taking the medicine away in the box of chocolates. Well, it's all so obvious, and I know what you're thinking.
What?
Well, that I could actually be capable of doing such a thing. And I am, you know. Anything I want, I usually get. I could have killed Uncle Christian, too, of course. While everybody was concentrating on that twit Edgar and his stupid threats against Lewis, I could have slipped out, shot the old man, and been back before anyone knew I was gone.
Gina, you mustn't talk like that.
But it's all true, and you know it. There's just one problem, isn't there? Nobody will ever be able to prove it.
You're quite good at that.
That cop finds out, he'll probably clap me in irons or whatever they do over here. I'm the #1 suspect anyhow.
Did Inspector Curry tell you that?
He didn't have to. It's obvious. I blew the fuse. I was out of the room when that old guy got nailed. It was my gun that the kid had. And besides all that, I'm an American. I know what they're like.
Mildred thinks you may be a gangster.
Yeah? Well, maybe I am.
I don't believe it. I visited Chicago once, met some very nice people.
I'm sure you didn't meet my family, Miss Marple. Not exactly high society.
Doesn't seem to have bothered Gina.
Not then, but now everything seems to. Since we came here, she's like a whole different person.
Why didn't you go back to the States and finish medical school?
I suppose I should have. But she just seemed to want to stay here so much. I don't know. I just went along with it.
That might have been a mistake.
You're telling me? I hardly even see her anymore. It's always off with Mr. Artsy Craftsy. Like right now.
I won't have you interfering.
Interfering? She's my mother.
It is my responsibility to take care of her, and I think I know how to do that better than you.
The only thing you know is how to be insufferably arrogant and rude.
It's time for her walk, if you'll excuse me.
Oh, Aunt Jane. I'm sorry. Selman's told me I could find some tea in here. I hate that woman.
She does seem rather officious.
And Mother just lets her lead her around by the nose. Oh, I'm sorry. I'd better pick it up.
Mildred, I'm sorry we haven't had a chance for a talk.
Yes, well, it hasn't exactly been the situation for little chats.
No, that's true. I'm terribly sorry about your brother.
Well, apparently you're the only one who is. Nobody seems to even care who murdered him.
Oh, I just heard that you lost your husband recently. I didn't know.
Yes, well, he'd been ill for several years.
That must have been very hard for you.
Hard? Not at all. He was a wonderful man. I was glad that I could do what I could to make his last years more comfortable.
Still and all.
Don't you know what it feels like to be needed? I mean, really, needed. I never knew until I was married. I was always just here, sitting in corners, being ignored, just as I am now.
Your mother cares for you more than you know.
And that's why she brings in all these strays and practically cuts me out of her life.
That's not fair, Mildred.
The tea is in the kitchen.
Somehow the answer's in this room. I know it. Nothing else you can remember about last night?
Just what I told you.
Then we'll go through it all again. Belliver and Markham were out of the room. Either of them a possible murderer. Restorick was at the piano. Mrs. Markham was over there. Either one of them could have sneaked out. And what about daughter Mildred?
Oh, I doubt she'd kill her own brother.
Oh, do you now? Did you know there was some doubt about the way her husband died?
I thought it was cancer.
Some people last for years with cancer. But when the vicar died, there was no attending physician. And she had him cremated the very next day.
You really suspect her?
I suspect everybody in this bloody house. Take your spirited young friend, Gina Markham. Did you know that her mother was adopted?
Yes, Pippa.
Yes. But did you know who her mother was? Pippa's mother, I mean. Frances Ellsworth.
The actress who poisoned her husband with arsenic.
And was hanged for it in 1943. Don't you find it a little more than of a passing interest? That Gina Markham's grandmother was a convicted arsenic poisoner. Quite a family.
We got queer taste in music, all right. Shostakovich, Tchaikovsky, Rachmaninoff, all the Ruskies.
Oh, please, Sergeant.
Oh, it's more like it. Handel's Largo. Claire de Lune. I know a lovely girl. Inspector. Over here, sir.
Stephen Restorick was sitting there.
It could have been put there later.
Or he could have meant to take it away earlier. Let's ask him. Sergeant. Oh, excuse me. Miss Belliver. Have you seen Mr. Restorick?
Oh, I'm afraid he's no longer here.
What do you mean he's no longer here?
I mean that he packed his bags and he left about an hour ago. He didn't say where he was going.
I can't believe it. Somebody trying to poison me?
I tried to keep it from you as long as I could. But now, with all that's happened and Stephen running away...
You knew about this, Jane?
I'm afraid so.
It's just not true. Any of it. I suppose I've been living outside reality for some time now. I think I'd like to go to my room alone, if you don't mind.
Oh, Inspector, come here. What does it look like? The room.
Oh, old, stuffy, rich.
But think of it as a stage set with a large, star-studded cast. Some on stage, some in the wings, props at the ready, house lights dim, curtain up, noises off. Entrances here, exits there. Conflict, action, climax, curtain down, thunderous applause. What do you think?
If you'll forgive me for saying so, I think you're beginning to sound as bonkers as everybody else in this place. I came to tell you that London have picked up Stephen Restorick getting off the train at Paddington Station. They're sending him straight back here. Thought you'd like to know.
Did he give any excuse for running away?
He claims he wasn't running away at all. He claims he was just tired of this place and decided to move back to London.
Not a very plausible story, is it?
It's a bloody lie, is what it is.
You think Stephen is our murderer?
I hope so. I really do hope so.
You're really jealous of Stephen, aren't you?
Don't I have a reason to be?
It's a theater, don't you understand? I get a lot of satisfaction out of my work there.
Out of your work? Are you sure that's all?
That's an ugly thing to say.
Yeah? The reason that you're here now instead of that stupid theater is because Stephen pulled his whole disappearing act.
That's ridiculous. We're together all the time.
Oh, excuse me.
No, come in.
No, I was not on
No,
my
I
way.
need somebody to hear this.
What?
Oh, I need a witness in case there's a divorce. Somebody to testify how he talks to me.
Come on, Gina.
What's the matter? Are you ashamed of whatever it is you have to say?
We'll talk about this later.
No, we won't. You say whatever you want right now, or don't say it at all. I mean that. Oh, don't worry about Aunt Jane. I doubt there's anything you can say she doesn't already know.
All right. Okay. What I was going to say is that I am fed up with it here, and I am fed up with you.
Are you really?
Yeah, really. We didn't know that much about one another when we first got married, did we? I mean, about each other's background and everything. The only thing that counted was how much we loved each other and all the great times that we had. And you can't tell me that we didn't.
They were all right.
All right, they were a hell of a lot better than all right. And you know it. Until we got here, and then everything started falling apart. I mean, suddenly, everybody treats me like I'm the village leper.
You're being ridiculous.
Am I?
Yes.
Well, I'm leaving, and I'm going back to the States next week. I'm going to finish up med school, and I'm going to start my own practice somewhere. I'm going to start my own life.
Well, you can just buy one ticket. Because I don't care if I never see you again. I was a stupid little fool ever to marry you in the first place, and I'll get a divorce as soon as I can. And I hope when you get home, you find some boring, miserable little frump who makes you realize how lucky you were to have me in the first place.
Fine. Great. Now we know just where we stand.
And it's your loss.
I'm sorry, Wally. I have to see Carrie Louise.
Oh, Mother. Oh, I didn't know you were busy.
Well, we're not really busy, are we, Jane?
Well, I suppose I just want to apologize for acting the way I did.
Oh, that's quite all right.
Is there anything I can get you? Some tea or something?
No, thank you, dear. Miss Belliver's tending to that.
Oh, yes, of course she is. All right, then.
Oh, dear. I wish she could be happier.
Mildred reminds me of Mary Alice Runacre back in St. Mary Mead. Tended her invalid father for 20 years, and when he finally died, everybody said, oh, finally Mary Alice is free and can make a life for herself. And she did mean to travel, but her first trip was to visit an elderly aunt in Cornwall. Well, unfortunately, the aunt had recently been bedridden, so Mary Alice offered to stay a while and help out. That was 5 years ago. As far as I know, she's still there.
Really?
Yes. You see, taking care of people was what she did best and what gave her the most pleasure. Some people are like that.
You told me that story for a reason, didn't you, Jane?
It's just a story. By the way, do you have any nail scissors handy?
Nail scissors? Whatever for?
I know it sounds ridiculous, but could you give me some nail clippings?
What do you expect me to do with these?
Analyze them. You do have some sort of dispensary or laboratory here, don't you?
Yes. What's the point?
Well, as I understand it, a chemical analysis of Carrie Louise's fingernails would determine what kind of poison she was given.
If I were you, Miss Marple, I wouldn't waste my time.
Oh, I have lots of time, Doctor.
Well, I haven't. Not for foolishness like this.
You know very well it isn't foolishness, don't you?
First thing in the morning, then.
Thank you.
All right, you meddling old witch. How much do you know?
I'll put that away, Doctor.
Oh, I see, a trap. All right, out of my way. Come on, both of you, round here. Come on, move. Don't move, or I'll kill her. And don't think I won't.
Stay there!
Cut across the park. Try and stop him at the gate. Are you all right?
I've been better, thank you.
Come on.
Okay, open the gates. Open the gates! Now get out. Get out! Stay where you are! He's a gunner, I'm afraid, sir.
Well, that's that then.
Not quite. I'm afraid we still have a murderer in our midst.
Restorick still won't explain why he ran away. He claims he doesn't know a thing about that gun and the piano stool. But what I want to know is, what put you on to Dr. Hargrove?
I suddenly remembered who Edgar reminded me of.
Not really the answer I was looking for.
Watch what you do, you bloody young hooligan!
Hardly the Stonygate spirit.
The Stonygate spirit is beginning to nauseate me.
When are you going to call London?
No, Gulbranson offices should be open now.
We really need to know what Christian was up to. It's a question of motive.
Well, Hargrove?
Partly. It's very complicated.
It's just possible I may be able to understand.
Soon, I promise. But Edgar is the key to the whole thing.
Obstinate, infuriating. Inspector Blacker was right about you, you know.
Didn't he also say bloody useful?
All right, I'll have Sergeant Lake bring young Edgar across for questioning.
You look surprised.
I suppose I am.
Me too, actually. Can't even explain how it happened. After our little screaming match yesterday, I went up to our room, slammed some doors, threw some things about. And then I sat down to think about what it was I really wanted.
Your husband.
Isn't it amazing? I mean, I married him because I loved it, that he was so strong, so committed to all the things he wanted to do. And then when we got here, he became so, I don't know, ineffectual. Until yesterday. I guess that's why I must have turned down Stephen's proposal.
When did you do that?
Oh, yesterday morning. Even before Wally told me off like that. I mean, wasn't he wonderful? Like the hero out of some old cowboy movie.
Or a Shakespeare play.
Was I really being a shrew?
Well, Kate's a much nicer role than Jezebel.
You're so greedy, honestly.
Yes, I see. 4 years ago. Yes, I understand. Oh, we'll certainly need a copy, yes. All right, I'll do that, and thank you very much indeed. What you expected?
More or less.
I'm beginning to see what you were after. Ah, Mr. Lawson. Sit down. Got some questions for you, lad.
I already told everybody. Didn't mean to do it. Something just came over me.
No more lies, boy. Just tell us who put you up to it.
Nobody put me up to nothing.
Oh, come off it. Somebody gave you that gun and told you to threaten Mr. Serico.
That's a lie!
And we know who it was, the one who killed Mr. Gulbranson.
No.
You're an accessory to murder, boy. Now just tell me the truth and we might go easy on you.
I don't know anything.
20 years to life. That's what you're facing. The same as if you pulled the trigger yourself. Now tell us the truth!
We can't find him, sir!
Well, keep looking, keep looking!
No, sir, it's no good! I can't see a thing, it's too muddy!
We'll get a crew down to drag the bottom. I'm sorry, Mr. Serigold. Well, what now? According to you, that lad was the key to everything.
He was.
Well, that key is never going to unlock anything now.
So, we'll just have to do it ourselves, won't we?
And I must say, I had my doubts when she told me. However, we've done some checking. And her theory seems to hold up very well indeed. But as it's her show, there's no reason why she shouldn't take the stage. Miss Marple.
Oh. Well, that's what it's all about, isn't it? The stage, the theater, illusion. Like a magician, using mirrors to fool the audience. But first, one small detail. Stephen, you bolted because Gina had turned you down, and you wanted to be someplace, any place away from here, to lick your wounds. Isn't that right? But we still have the problem of someone trying to poison our dear Carrie Louise.
Poison Mother? What are you talking about?
Perhaps some of you are unaware that the entire investigation of Christian's murder was based on the assumption that someone was trying to poison Carrie Louise. The theory was that Christian might know the identity of the poisoner and was therefore killed to keep him quiet.
But that's nonsense. I mean, who would try to poison Mother?
Well, there was evidence, you see. Firstly, Mrs. Sericole's illness. The symptoms could have been the result of slow arsenic poisoning. In fact, Mr. Sericole said that Mr. Gulbranson had told him that's exactly what they were. And then, of course, there was the letter in Mr. Gulbranson's typewriter telling how he'd discovered the poisoning plot. In fact, poison was discovered in Mrs. Sericole's medicine and in the chocolates which were delivered to her.
Some pretty solid evidence.
But is it? Carrie Louise's physical condition could be exactly what it appears. The result of a mild flu, plus the sad toll the years take on all of us. And you see, the letter in the typewriter could have been written not by Christian, but by the murderer. And the medicine and the chocolates could have been doctored later to give the firm impression that there was a poisoner afoot.
Then you mean Grandmother wasn't being poisoned?
Exactly, thank the Lord. But if there wasn't a poisoner, then what in the world brought Christian down here in the first place? Inspector?
Ah, yes. Well, earlier today, I rang Mr. Gulbranson's office and found that on the afternoon before he arrived here, he had received a preliminary audit of Stoneygate's finances. It was obvious that there had been gross irregularities and a full accounting was ordered, which is now in progress. And at Miss Marple's suggestion, we had them dig a little further into the files. We found that 4 years ago, Mr. Gulbranson, on behalf of the foundation, had turned down a plan by Dr. Hargrove to establish a fully self-contained youth center. The model of it is still in Mr. Sericole's study.
Yes, of course it is.
It's my opinion, and I'm quite sure that the accounting will bear me out, that in the last few years, tens of thousands of pounds have been embezzled from the Gulbranson Foundation to set up this center independently.
That's damned unfair. You're slandering a dead man.
Please, Mr. Sericole. Miss Marple has a few more enlightening things to tell us.
Dr. Hargrove must have thought the youth center would bring him international fame as a psychologist. People do strange things pursuing a dream of glory.
But I still can't believe that you would actually kill people.
Oh, I could. He tried to kill me twice. He dropped those lights on me at the theater. He thought he would be safer with me out of the way.
And then he tried again when you bought him those nail clippings. Persistent devil, wasn't he?
He knew that an analysis of Carrie Louise's nails would prove that she'd never been subjected to any kind of poison. And if there wasn't a poisoner, then we would be on to the real reason for Christian's visit, the embezzlement.
Then Hargrove killed Uncle Christian because he discovered the embezzlement?
No, Dr. Hargrove was in the room when we heard the first shot.
Yes, he was, wasn't he? And he shouted to Louis through the door. And you said that you could cope with Edgar.
I remember.
But then if Dr. Hargrove didn't murder my brother, who did?
Another person to whom that youth center had become an obsession. The one who thought of the whole poison story, and the one who actually engineered the embezzlement. I'm afraid Christian's murderer is you. Mr. Sericold.
This is insane. When Christian was killed, I was in the study almost being killed myself. You were all there. You heard it.
Yes, but we didn't see it, did we?
But what's the difference?
Oh, a great deal, Mr. Sericold. What first put me onto it was that Edgar kept reminding me of someone back home, and I suddenly remembered who it was. A foolish young man named Leonard Wiley, a dentist. His father was a dentist, too. But he got old, and his hand began to shake, so all of the patients preferred the son, of course. The old man was miserable. Oh, he moped around. So Leonard began to pretend that he drank. He doused himself with whiskey, and he staggered about and slurred his speech and all that. You see, his idea was that the patients would then go back to the father. Well, anybody with good sense would know what was going to happen. All the patients went to another dentist, Mr. Riley. The irony of it was that I always thought Leonard was a most unconvincing drunkard. He always seemed to overdo it, just as Edgar seemed to overdo everything. But Edgar was putting on his little act for the benefit of the one person here who was the closest he'd ever had to a real father. Again, you, Mr. Sericold. We all know that Edgar belonged to the theater group here, and that he could be counted on to do his part well enough. So, while you crept out of the study, ran around to Christian's room, and killed him, Dr. Hargrove and Edgar performed their lines in person, taking their cues from your tape-recorded voice. You do use a tape recorder, I've seen it.
And there were the 2 bullet holes in your books. They were exactly where your head would have been, Mr. Sericold. There's no way Edgar Lawson could have missed you if you'd been sitting behind the desk. And I dare say a thorough search of the house will probably turn up a pair of gloves you used with powder marks on them. Or possibly your fingerprints on Mr. Gulbranson's typewriter. In any case, a full audit. Where are you going?
Well, the game's up, isn't it? I thought you might like to have the tape that I used. It's in the study.
Sergeant Lake, be careful. He's got my gun in the study.
Hurry up.
Don't worry, Inspector. He won't try to escape.
He sneaked out of that room once before, ma'am.
Don't come in, sir. Please.
I'm afraid when an idealist becomes a fanatic, the line between right and wrong becomes a blur.
But he wasn't a bad man, was he? What he wanted was good.
And he was ready to risk his own life to save Edgar Lawson from drowning.
I know. And he did love me very much. And I loved him. I always will.
Aunt Jane, I believe I owe you a debt of gratitude, too. Because Mother tells me it's thanks to you that Miss Belliver was given the sack. Well, have a good journey.
Jane, how did you figure it all out?
Actually, you were the key to the solution.
Me?
You won't be offended. But people always say that you live in this never land, that you're not really in touch with reality.
I suppose it's true.
No. You were the only one around here. who could separate reality from illusion. And when you kept insisting that no one could possibly try to poison you, I had to rethink what we'd all assumed was the reality. And once I'd accepted the idea that you were not being poisoned, then it all fell into place.
Ready to go, Aunt Jane?
It's all right. Gina has promised to drive very slowly.
Maybe I was wrong. Maybe you're not as in touch with reality as I thought.
Better come, Aunt Jane, or we'll miss your train.
You know, there's someone else in St. Mary Mead that you remind me of. Lucy Bond.
No, don't say it. All these little village parallels. They've all got a sting in the tail. You really are wicked, you know.
Huh?
These are for you. Because you remind me of my old mum.